Welcome to episode 44 of Roll or Die. Our guest today needs no introduction. We have probably one of the greatest Australian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu participants ever, Mr. Lachlan Giles.
Woohoo!
Thanks for joining
guys.
us.
How are you?
I'm damn good, man. I'm
Thank
damn
you.
good. I've also got some things here about Lachy. Like, he's a stakeholder in Absolute MMA, which is our gym. He's known around the global jiu-jitsu scene as the giant killer, which I love. And I want to talk a bit about that today. He's the husband of Livia, who's a previous guest of the show. And everybody knows who she is. And he is, like, really one of the most humble people I know and a great ambassador to the world of jiu-jitsu. Like, it just seems like seriously, Lockie, it seems like when you show up to compete, it's almost like you're there, you just happen to be there at the time, you just happen to throw down and compete, you just happen to kill giants, and you just go about it and take it all in your stride, man. And I just love that about you, because everybody's, there's a lot of bling in the scene and all that sort of stuff, but not you, man. You're like, you stayed true to the humble roots of martial arts, it seems to me. Have you always been that way? Have you always been like a humble guy who just gets the job done?
I think I'm just quiet, so people think I'm humble.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, it works for you, man.
Yeah. No. I don't know. I mean, it's jiu-jitsu is a humbling sport. It should be anyway. I mean, I think there's no one out there that doesn't get beaten in the training room, at the very least on occasion. So I think it should make you humble, but obviously some people talk otherwise, but yeah, I mean, it would be.
Are you talking about Gordon Ryan there, or
no,
just
not at all. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, I think it's, I wouldn't pretend to be something I'm not. I feel like, obviously I've had a lot of success in competitions and so on, but at the same time, I've had a lot of losses as well. I probably lost as many matches as I've won, or maybe lately that's tipped more in my favor, but I'd say it's not like it's been all positive results the whole time. So
and do you find that that's an important part of your prep, is to stay like grounded? Is that like a whole part of the package for you? Like, how do you, when you're going into like some of these big tournaments, there's I'm imagining there's a fair bit of self-pressure, I guess. I mean, you are the owner of a gym, you have a Shark Tank over there with, some of the greatest competitors in Australia, and then you go over and you compete. But what's the experience of that like for you when you're going in to face a really big competitor? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it used to be more daunting, but I think we've kind of got the level now in Australia where or at least on our mat, I feel like if I'm doing well and the moves are working there, I feel like it will translate. Obviously, we don't have a for my division, we don't have a JT Torres or a Lucas Lepre in the room for me to test it on, but I feel like there's guys who are at a very good level, and I know that if it's working on them and they're, trying to learn and adapt to defend it, and I can still find a way to work. I feel like it can, then the techniques or whatever I'm working on is ready to be taken to the next level. So I think having that confidence is good. Probably, maybe 5-6 years ago, I think it was much harder for someone coming from Australia to feel that. You'd go to an international competition, and I remember like my first international competition, I went against someone from Brazil, and I was like, they're from Brazil. Like, how can I beat them? They train with people from Brazil. Like just the fact that they're from the country where it starts, and they've got like all these black belt training partners, was enough to put you like off mentally. But I think now we're at a stage in Australia where you can be confident in your own gym and your own training. So I think that's really good.
I wanted to ask you about that. When we had Liv on earlier this year, we talked a little bit about Absolute beginnings, or Absolute St Kilda, or what was previously Absolute South Yarra. And I just wanted to hear kind of your perspective on that, because we talked with Liv a bit about the culture, I guess with her more so around the women's team, but just in general. I mean, I think it'd be fair to say there's been a big culture shift in what was previously Absolute South Yarra. When you guys took it over in, I think it was about 2014, it was slightly different. So I guess it seems like it came from the top, and I just wanted to chat with you, if we could, around culture and how you you managed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think. I mean, it's probably like a different vibe when we started. There was to me, the biggest hurdle was actually a very unusual one, where when we took over, it was mostly higher belts. You know, I think there was like blue, purple, brown belts, and there was like 1 or 2 white belts. They were actually members of the gym, and the hardest thing was actually like having someone new come into the gym and to feel like they're getting somewhere, because obviously, like, no matter, you could do whatever you want for the first month or 6 months really, and you're still not going to be beating the blue belts after that. So I think that was, to me, I mean, it's not really a cultural thing. It's just like I guess it was just that was what was tough about it to me. And then, so I suppose, like, coming in and seeing that my challenge, I guess, was to try to build a culture where we could have people, you know, a new white belt, and get enough people on the mat where a new white belt could have, like, you want to have your roles where you win, you want to have your roles where they're really tough, and you want to have your roles that you lose. So you kind of get the full spectrum there. So to try to get to that stage as quick as possible. And then, like, it took a while to get that up to the level. Like, now I feel like we've got a continuum. We've got, like, from white through to black belt. There's, no matter where you are in that continuum, you've got someone who you can see that you're just behind, and someone that you're just ahead of, and you can kind of roll with the appropriate people and try your new skills out on certain people, and your A game on other people. And yeah, so I think that to me was quite the biggest challenge. Culturally, I think it was just a different, like, obviously Kit was running it before. It was like, Kit's obviously played Aussie rules football and so on in the past, and I felt it was probably more like a footy club sort of culture, which is good. I think that's good in its own thing. Yeah, like, Kit's great with banter and that sort of stuff. So it was always good value there. But obviously, like, it gets hard. Like, as you get more members, it gets harder to have something like that. And you obviously need generally, the more people you get, the more you kind of need rules to, because if people are more likely to do their own thing, and you start getting bigger, that can start to be very hard to control what people are doing. So
that's really interesting.
As the club grows.
That's really interesting, right? Because imagine if Kit if you didn't have this gym, as in taking it over from, I guess, what Kit created. Do you think it's feasible or possible that it wouldn't be the group of killers that it is today? Like, is that a kind of an imprint of the culture of the gym that you took over? And it might be a completely different kind of parallel universe should that not have happened. If you just started it from scratch, if that gym closed down, those guys all went their separate ways, you didn't have the Ben Hodgkinsons and all those sorts of people who'd come through, would that have been a completely different outcome, do you reckon?
It's hard to say, but it could have been. Yeah. I'd say certainly having already that culture, like, a lot of the people there were competing and taking it quite seriously. We've got people who had, like Ben Hodgkinson, who'd moved from Perth to train with Kit. So, yeah, that's obviously just to demonstrate how, the approach of the people that were there training kind of had. I mean, I know at the time I was competing, and so, like, I probably had that same attitude. I was probably, in my mind, I would like to have built something that I think Kit was envisaging as well.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it'd be similar, but maybe it's harder to it's different when if you're starting with fresh white belts to build it up. That takes, how long does it take you to take a new one? Like right now, we've got a few people who started when basically there's guys like Dion who started just before I came in. Like he started under Kit, and like Dion's now like really good he's like a good role. He's like, he catches a lot of the higher, like a lot of the, even some of the black belts, he'll catch a lot. He's got a nasty umber. He's got me with that too. But like, so we've now got people who started then, but that's taken 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So if everyone started there, it would have been, and I didn't have the higher belts to roll with, it would have made probably a big impact on my own competitive career, I think, because
that's
you need,
true. Yeah.
You need the higher level guys to push you at my, like, when I'm trying to compete internationally, there's a certain floor for, if I'm rolling with white belts, which is fine, but it's probably not going to help me prepare for, fighting in the world championships.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I'm fascinated with that whole aspect of it, really, because I think there's this humbleness of you, and there's like the banter of Kit kind of brought in this elite level, that elite level of culture, I guess, then really, I think, elevated you, is what I'm kind of imagining has happened here. And then you are one of the ones that's now come out as literally like you're on the world stage, and that's a phenomenal output. And like, I do believe that a lot of those things are chained together, and every step of the way is something to be grateful for, really, because there's some luck in that. It feels like there's some luck in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, before, like I was talking with Simon about possibly like doing something in Box Hill, like opening a gym, like out, somewhere, somewhere far away. And I was like, that probably would have been, I think the fact that it was something close, like generally if you're closer to the city, people can come. If it was out in Box Hill, it might have had some really good competitors, or people wanted to move to Melbourne, but they wouldn't necessarily be in a region, where they can visit. Like we're in St Kilda, which is probably one of the areas people often, if you're a tourist in Melbourne, you'll often stay somewhere around St Kilda. So we get a lot of visitors that come to, they're like, oh, where should I train? Oh, we've got Absolute in St Kilda. So we get a lot of drop-ins, and that would be probably quite different if we were out somewhere further away, which is, it's not bad. It's just
different.
Probably kind of all fell into place for us. So
I think that's just an example, Lachie, as well, of your humbleness, because I think it's not just a matter of luck, Anton. I think specific training has been probably a big part of your success, would you say? Like, and that's something that, I mean, I came from a different club where we didn't do any of that sort of thing. In case anyone's been living under a rock, can you sort of explain in a bit of a nutshell what specific training is, how it works for you, how you use it in your own training, and how you use it as a coach?
Yeah. So it's probably, I suppose I always found I got the most, I used to, when I was a purple brown belt, I would try and get like training sessions in with people like Kit. I used to drive, like when he went out to Lilydale, I would drive an hour and a half twice a week to go and train with Kit in Lilydale. And because Kit would like, he was learning he was doing modern things, like the modern style. And he was always ahead of me. I was always like trying to chase him, and whenever I'd finish a training session, I'd be very like, I'd enjoy the session, but I'd also be like frustrated going, okay, like he's blocking this and that. And I'd go home and I'd study how to try and deal with that. And then we'd roll again, and I'd try to fix the issue. And even though he kind of always stayed that step above, it kind of pushed me to get better as well. But that was, we would often, like I found, I guess when we were just training, like it wasn't a class, we would just get together, and we would often go like, okay, well, let's start from this position and let's go. Like, we're trying to work on this, so let's just go from there. And then I was like, well, I found that helped me a lot. I felt I was progressing faster, training like exactly what I wanted to work, or the position I'm focusing on, and kind of narrowing or constraining the role to just that position. And if we go out of position, we're going to start again. So I suppose just implementing that in the classes I teach. So if we're doing a class on mount, or side control or half guard, whatever, like you start from there. And once you either succeed in doing your thing or you fail, and you go back and you try again. So not just keeping on rolling and kind of, you know, working something else. Okay. So obviously rolling is important as well, but we try to do whatever the theme of the class is. We'll usually do some specific training on that area too.
Also, though, I've noticed, though, I mean, you guys are the only ones I've ever heard of who do, like, whole classes devoted to video breakdown. You know what I mean? Like, you'll sit there with a group of students who just seem to want to roll. I don't know how much, like, I've never been to one, but I see you advertise them. And you break down.
All through the lockdown, Anton. He was doing them all through.
Yeah, I was under a rock. I was under one of those proverbial rocks. But yeah, I mean, that is like, that's scientific stuff. That's probably, again, one of the elements, like that analytical approach to training, that like breaking down what works and what doesn't work and throwing away stuff just because people have done it for 50 years doesn't mean we should keep doing it. That sort of view of training is very breakthrough stuff.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, my approach, a lot, obviously not the video analysis, but I think a lot of my thing is just like, I kind of look at what I think has the biggest impact. And I tend to just focus on that, like something like specific training, I think is, if you do a lot of that, drills and specific training and rolling, if your classes are mostly focused on that and you focus on areas or positions that seem to occur quite frequently in competition, then I think you're already like, that's most of what you should work on. You know, if you just stick to those couple of things like that, I think kind of adding in a whole bunch of extra variables can be, you sometimes end up taking away time from what's the most important. So I feel like, just focusing on the right things, a couple of things that we know work really well and just sticking to them and doing them properly. Video analysis is really for me just to, I suppose, like looking for differences in how I see, like how I would imagine I would do something. And then when I analyze it, I'm like, okay, so like, let's say we're passing half guard, like I'm going to go for the underhook. And then I'm watching, I'm like, well, that guy's not going for the underhook. Why, you know, what's the reason for that? And then sometimes you notice that there's another way to control from the position or like something interesting that's different. And then obviously if it's work, especially something that, if you find something that someone high level is doing that other people don't really know, then it can give you a huge advantage. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Kim?
I am. Throughout the lockdown, Lachy, you were quite vocal in your, how was that, like the government's response to the training, etc. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Would you have seen that we would be back training this year? And, you know, how do you think things could have been done differently? Or are you kind of happy with the way things worked out, given that in Melbourne anyway, it was probably a good 6 months that people couldn't train?
It was really, it was eight months really. I mean, where we are now is like right at the start. I kind of, from my perspective, as soon as I saw that places like New Zealand had eliminated it and like we could get to that point, I was like, well, it's a no-brainer for jiu-jitsu because people are going to be scared to train. Like even if we are training, if we're open, let's say you're open and there's like COVID running rampant, then it's not going to be very good for business like that. The only like good solution I could see would be to eliminate it. So I really wanted the government to go kind of hard for that, but they kind of didn't, and they never really, even where we are now, they never stated that was the goal. So that was just very frustrating to me. So like we got there, but it took a lot longer than I think it should have. And then at a certain point, like when they're making up, when they're fumbling and, you know, making these mistakes and what I would say is essentially prolonging the point to get here. At a certain point, I'm like, well, if you're not going to do it right, then like, can we just, I don't know, like let's change our model, do something like what Europe's doing or something like that, because it wasn't a very good or sustainable thing for the businesses, which I mean, I think it's good to get there in the end, but like in the future for something like this, like it should be is if you're going to do it harsh and fast, and don't make people suffer for 8 months would be the.
So that being said, I mean, how do you see international jiu-jitsu competitions moving forward, like next year? Like what exactly is going to happen with ADCC? Like, is that going to be able to go ahead?
I think it's delayed. I think it probably won't be able to go ahead till vaccines are kind of widespread. Yeah.
Yeah. So you, in terms of your competition sort of goals for the future, are you just going to sort of shelve that and leave it as sort of local comps, or where do you see Australian Jiu-Jitsu headed, given, you know, the world pandemic that's going on out there, and there's probably not a lot of opportunity for that international competition scene?
Yeah, there'll be. I mean, obviously, there's already competition started in Australia, so I think Australia will get back into it pretty soon. For me, I mean, you know, ADCC is probably my main goal, which is whenever that is, in a year or 2 years. I have no idea, but so I'm probably mostly preparing for that, and
that's interesting.
I might do a local comp or two just to test out some new things I'm working on, but we'll see.
Would that work? Like, would it be like, can you get a comp feel on a mat full of people who already compete, or do you have to go and compete in a comp to get a feel of a comp? You know, like what?
I mean, yeah, you get better off like in a comp. It's better for preparation, but I also don't. I feel it's more the nerves and that's like I feel like if you compete a couple of times, you know, like let's say ADCC's in September, like if you compete in July and August, then you're kind of a bit less nervous come September. I don't see too much benefit me competing this month for ADCC in 2 years, because I'll kind of forget the whole nerves and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
I mean, with ADCC, Lachie, so I guess this pandemic kind of came in when you were really peaking in terms of your popularity in terms of the jiu-jitsu world, and, you know, let's face it, you won a bronze in the open division at ADCC as a under 77 kilos. So how are you feeling about the fact that the next ADCC could be another 2 years away, and you're kind of losing what's almost like your peak time as a competitor?
Yeah.
How does that sit?
I mean, there's not much you can do about it, right? So, I mean, I still feel like I'm improving and I'm working some new stuff. So as long as I always said I'll keep competing, and I'm pretty sure I'll keep competing until I feel like I'm slowing down, you know, until I feel like, you know, like I kind of, I think from a technical point of view, I'll keep improving until I'm, you know, 50. I don't know when your brain starts deteriorating, but let's say it's 55 or something. But at a certain point, your body slows down, and, you know, your reaction time and your strength and injuries probably mean you can train less. So at some point, even though I think like the technical knowledge goes up, I think the body goes down, and at some point the overall performance starts to decrease, and probably at that point I don't see.
Then there's World Masters for you, bro. Come and join us at World Masters, man.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, then there's just competing for fun then, right? Like,
there absolutely is.
Which is a bit different. Yeah.
So I want to know, like, if bigger dudes don't scare you and stronger dudes don't scare you, like leading into a comp, what does scare you? Like, if someone wants to get under your skin or beat you, or what does unnerve you as far as comps go?
In terms of, I don't know if it's the opponent so much as I mean, big people do scare me. I didn't want to fight Prashesh. I didn't want to fight any of them, but I kind of, what can you do? You already entered you'd already entered the tournament. Yeah, but it's probably more like, you know, in terms of nerves and so on, it's more based on like the result and how you think, you know, you have this idea in your head that actually it's kind of dumb, isn't it? Because no one really cares except you. But you know, you have this idea in your head that you're, you know, at this level, and then, you know, if you lose really badly, that kind of shatters your worldview a bit, and you go, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought, or maybe I'm better than I thought. No, it depends how you perform. Yeah, I definitely feel like I before, like, there's a level I'm at, and then like that ADCC bronze was definitely me performing above my actual my actual level, but I don't care. You can't take my medal away. So bad luck.
Yeah. I think that's pretty humble because like you'd had a pretty good comp record before then. Like you'd won a bronze at Black Belt Nogi Worlds, and you'd done well at several other invitational, especially Nogi.
Yeah.
Nogi
I'd say I'd had, I'd beaten some, but prior to that, I'd had some wins over some high profile people, but I don't think if you looked at that bracket, like almost no one would have put my name in there being a bronze medalist in that. Like, I think I certainly outperformed that, but I think like in the lead up to that ADCC, I was definitely rolling better than I ever had. So I was definitely, if there was a day to do it, that was it. Well, the day before was as well, but I lost. But yeah, on that day it was having to work for me. So
yeah. Can we talk at all about your, like, I guess your beginning earlier days of jiu-jitsu? From what I remember, you were much more of a gi guy. Like you weren't as big in the no-gi until probably about 4 or 5 years ago that you started doing a bit more no-gi. What do you sort of think in terms of people's training, gi, no-gi, like mixing it up sort of 50-50, or are they different? Would you recommend somebody that's new to jiu-jitsu starting with the gi? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it is getting towards a stage at the elite level that I don't think it's quite there yet, but at some point I think you won't be able to be a world champion at both. I think you still can. Obviously, you got guys like JT Torres, and so actually I don't know if he's won gi worlds, but he's been very close. He's a top gi competitor, a top no gi competitor, and there's plenty of people who are in that that same boat. But I think at some point the divergence will probably make that very unlikely anyway. But that's like the elite of it. Most people aren't trying to be world champions at black belt. Like most people are just doing it as a hobby, training for fun. So I just kind of think do whatever you like, or do both. I think when you start, do both. We get more people coming in to do no-gi, but I think that's because you don't own a gi when you start. So it's like a barrier. It's a barrier to people actually starting. So we end up getting more people in our fundamental intro no-gi classes because they don't have to buy a gi. They can just try out jiu-jitsu, and then they've probably seen MMA. So they want to do, they kind of see it as no-gi. They don't see a reason to put the gi on as much. But I think it is actually, I do actually think gi is better when you just start because it slows things down a bit and makes, you really, I think when you go in the gi against like if you're a white belt and you've just started and you go against a blue belt in the gi, you can really feel helpless. Whereas sometimes no gi, you get someone kind of flailing around and they can scramble out of things a bit easier. So maybe you get to, Liv's walking past, in no-gi. Yes, yeah. I think in no-gi you get to see, it's harder to see how effective jiu-jitsu can be. But I think it takes a longer time to develop a feel for the no-gi grips and controls because it's a bit harder to control someone no-gi. But eventually it's not too different. But yeah.
I got two questions for you. One, do you think you would beat Kit now? Because Kit doesn't train as much anymore, I get the feeling, right? So is he a natural phenom that you will always be a little bit behind? Or is it just...
Maybe he's got the mental age now.
Yeah, like what? He's bigger as well. I think he's bigger and maybe stronger.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea, but Kit's, he's like such a, I'll say a freak athlete. Like the way he is, he's like got the right strength and body type, but also his brain works in this weird way where he can, he would always do something I've never seen anyone do before. And I'd be like, that's really good. Like he's just kind of would work out a way to move, to defend something. And I'm like, how did you come up with that? It wasn't something anyone else was doing. Right. And then I would try it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good, you know. So there's I learned a lot from Kit like that. Obviously, Kit. I don't think Kit. So I think he could have been, you know, really, you know, he could have been winning multiple world championships. I think if he at black belt, if he was like fully committed, I think he kind of at a certain stage he decided that he just liked doing jiu-jitsu as a hobby more than like a full-time thing, which is fair enough.
Yeah. And my second question is, you were posting on Facebook that one of your goals in lockdown was to do the splits. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty close now. I'm almost there. Yeah.
Did it? What impact has that had on your life, being Lachlan Giles who can now do the splits?
I think it's my guard retention's better now again. So yeah, it definitely helps more than it's probably like, I think when you get to a certain level, like improving an attribute like that can have a huge impact on your game, because it becomes harder and harder you get like very small incremental, you know, if I work my back takes or something, I get very incremental improvement, but improving your range of motion can have a large impact. So
yeah, that's cool, man. And also it's a great party trick too. Like everyone's having a few drinks, you just drop down into the
I'm not quite there yet. I can't show it at a party yet. Give me a few more months and I'll be there.
All right, brother. That's great. Well, Kim, have you got any more questions?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much out. No, that was great. Thank you so much. I mean, you've been on podcasts with some of the biggest names, Lachy, like very professional, you know, outfits, and we thank you so much for taking the time to come to our humble little little show. We don't know how many people actually listen to this. We think there might be about 5 or 6, but hopefully now that you're here,
over 6 million. She means million, but yeah. I really appreciate
it. All right, thanks, Steve, for having me on, guys. That was good. Good chat.
Thank you. Thanks for making such a huge contribution to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu scene around the world. You're an inspiration to many, and I look forward to seeing you one of these days on the mats for hopefully a role.
Yeah.
Yes, that'd be good.
Cheers. Thanks again, Lachy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.
See ya.
Okay. Bye. Bye.